Hello, it works. We have internet for now. um, yeah, I pre-apologize if we get cut off because hi everybody. So nice to be back online with you all. I know it's been a little while. I'm very sorry. I have been a little bit busy of late. I'm actually not in Scotland. I'm having a gin and tonic, but it's not a forget-me-not gin and tonic. I could have lied and said it was, but as I'm on location, it was the best I could do. They don't have it at this place yet. But cheers, everyone. And it's very noisy. And of course, we are here to talk about The Ministry of Utmost Happiness by the wonderful Arundhati Roy. And I didn't quite think it was going to be this intense. And I had read her other book, which is now The God of Small Things. I was like, The God of Other Things? I know that's not right. But I read it so many years ago, and I remember just being so in love with it. But you know, you sort of forget what the plot is. And I just remember being so lost in the world of India and this family. And I was like, oh, this will be a little bit of a breather, because I know we've had quite a lot of heavy books of late. And it wasn't. So I apologize for that. But I did end up loving this book. I think it was definitely tough to get into. And I think also because I've been quite busy, I sort of in the beginning, I was like picking it up and putting it down, picking it up and putting it down over other things. And it was so dense with so much information. And the characters, there was so many of them that I think it did take a little while for me to sort of settle into the rhythm or settle into the stories. And I loved the story of Anjum, and I wanted to know more about her inner world. And I was so kind of, my head was turning every second just with all these other characters. But then, you know, when I was thinking about it, I was like, well, this is actually, I think this is a ploy, and it's a very wisely crafted one to sort of give you that feeling of that chaotic, manic sense of those like inner Delhi neighborhoods, and of the lack of what we would know as our own personal space and all of those things. And I think that in that way, once you sort of allow that rhythm or whatever to kind of settle within you, then I was able to get into it. And then I fell in love with so many of the characters, but also it's an angry novel, I think, and there's a lot of pain in its pages, and I didn't want to do that to us again, because God knows there's enough of that in the world at the moment. So, but I guess it's inescapable, especially, you know, everywhere. I think it's like everywhere you look right now, it feels like that. So I have to admit, there was times when I was like a little just drawn, you know, with everything going on in the world. And then, you know, and I will admit to my ignorance about any details, I suppose, of the Kashmir issue, or the Kashmir civil war. Is that the right terminology? Probably not. I mean, obviously I knew there was a dispute over the land, and I knew there was troubles and uprisings and everything like that, but I wasn't intimately familiar with it. So it was also quite an education to read about that and to sort of understand what's going on in Kashmir. But anyway, I wrote down some of your lovely questions that you left on the Instagram post. And the first one was, and I actually didn't write down the names, and I'm really stupid. I should have done that. But first one was just, did I like the book? And I think I've sort of explained that. I did. I ended up loving it, but I definitely struggled with parts of it. And I struggled getting into it, I think, was the hardest thing. And I wish I had had sort of undisturbed time that I could have like focused more on it, because I felt like it needed a lot of my mental attention, which I was trying to do too many things, so I would put it down too often. But I did. And I actually, I think sometimes when I'm reading a book and I'm struggling a little bit, in the moment it can feel difficult, but I think often then the reward feels so much bigger when you finally sort of get in the rhythm of it and understand the tempo and the language that this author is speaking in. Because I think that's so often what it is. It's, you're entering into their particular world and their language, and there's always a rhythm to it, or there's always a flow that you have to understand before you can, I think, really allow the book to wash over you. So that's my answer to that one. Hi everyone. I'm also like, I should read some of your messages too. Hold on. So Kate Bug asked if my hubby and I were reading the same things. No, he's a very science guy. He likes books about science. Obviously I don't. Oh, no, I'm not going to let anyone to the live video. Hi, though. I think it would just get too complicated. So Jessica DeSena, that is actually, I have one of your other questions, so hi, your name has come up twice. But I'm going to read out one of your other questions later. SJ Gutierrez 58, Gutierrez. Going through what we are globally, it was hard and difficult to get into. So much happening in my personal life, I couldn't separate it. I actually had to leave the house and read in the park. Oh, I'm sorry. But I do, I understand exactly where you're coming from. I think, I think sometimes the exhaustion of corruption and people who've become so corrupted by power and this divisiveness, and people wanting to hold on to their own little corners and blaming other people just because they're not the same religion, or they're not the same color, or they're not the same caste, which, I obviously knew there was a caste system, but the breakdown of, okay, well, if you're this caste, but then what level within that caste you are, that was all total revelation to me, and I feel quite ignorant for that. But all of that, I think it sometimes it can be so overwhelming, this negativity and this, I don't know, the corruption of the world at the moment. And that's why I think, there was so much hope towards the end, and there was so much healing in many ways that, I felt absolved that I hadn't absolutely brought us all down a complete river of despair. But yeah, it was definitely, going out to the park to read is a good idea. Being surrounded by nature is a great idea. Is Eddie with me? Eddie is not with me. I'm working, so Eddie needs quite a lot of care and attention these days, so she needs to get meds 3 times a day and all that kind of stuff. So while I'm on set, I can't be doing that, and she can't be left in a hotel room unless it's for a day or two. But so no, and I'm missing her. Okay, so let's go to the second question. Was my favorite character? I think either Anjum I loved for her flamboyance and the complications of her, beliefs, and like how she transforms herself, and this desire to be a mother and all of that. But I wanted to know more about Anjum. I think that's also where I sort of struggled in the beginning, is because I felt like I wasn't getting, I'm an actress, so of course I am a glutton for, people's innermost thoughts and how they feel about things. But, I think she was almost unreachable, and I wanted more insight into her sort of internal world, which I felt that I got with Tilo. And I'm probably mispronouncing that, but I'm going to go with Tilo. And so, yeah, Tilo's story, it just got me. And that's, I think, once I got into her whole story and with Naga and with Musa, I just, yeah, I mean, I felt so strongly for her and for her predicament and just how she was able to survive all of these things. And, you know, it's, that was, I think, yeah, that's my favorite. I'm going to go with her. Let me see, what else have we got here? The cloud busting, did I imagine you said your only location? I don't know what that means. Kate Closet, are you missing the Outlander crew? Very much so. But I talk to them, or we keep on our little messages, so they're always close at hand. Hello from Argentina, hola. Hi from Ireland, hey, hi from Cape Cod, in Brazil, did I ever feel the Irish conflict as a child? That's from Jane Hinrichsen. Well, yeah, I grew up right at the height of the Troubles in the 80s. And even though I was not living in Northern Ireland, I was living right on the border. So in many ways, my life wasn't impacted day to day like somebody who would have been living in Belfast or Derry or any other place in Northern Ireland. But you know, the whole conflict of Northern Ireland changed the trajectory of my family. My dad was a police officer and was stationed to the border when I was a baby. So I probably would have grown up in a very different place had that not been going on. And my dad worked the border his entire sort of career when I was a kid. And yeah, we had bomb scares in my town. You know, there was terrible, horrific bombings in Northern Ireland that I remember so clearly. And I remember seeing all the TV footage that happened only, 30 minutes away from where I lived. And those had a really strong impact on me. In particular, the Enniskillen bombing, which happened when I was about 8 or 9. And I remember that just so clearly. And I think, anyone who grows up in close proximity to conflict, of course it affects you. So, reading about these battles and these insurrections and suppression and all of these things, it's, obviously I don't understand it in the same way that anyone who grew up in Kashmir or in any of these, the West Bank or Gaza or any places. But, I think even if you have a small sense of it, you can understand how difficult it is and how painful that must be. And I think no one comes out of living in those areas totally unscathed. Okay, so the next question was, have I ever been to India and did I know much about the history of Kashmir? I have been to India. I almost went to India twice. When I was supposed to go to India when I was 20, but I forgot to get the visa, so I ended up spending longer in Nepal, which was amazing. But I was in India, oh my gosh, probably about 14 years ago, maybe. And I was in Goa and where else was I? Hampi. I was there on a job, so I didn't get to travel around as much as I would like. And it's always been a dream of mine to go and travel lots in India because I have such a fascination with that country and with their culture. And, I think I had to check myself when I was reading this book because I definitely think, it's very easy to romanticize a culture or romanticize or exoticize. I don't know if that's a word, but look at a place from afar and sort of pick the bits that you want to it take on, and the idea of like, oh, it's, all of the amazing gods they have and the yoga and the food and everything. And it's I think in some ways that's a very reductive way to absorb a culture or to look at a culture. And I had to really kind of chastise myself for not reading more and not learning more about many aspects of Indian culture. Like I remember when I went there being so shocked. We stayed in Goa, which is obviously an ex-Portuguese colony. So it's very Christian in Goa, but we travelled by car actually towards Hampi, and we stopped off in a couple of what in Indian terms were tiny cities, but they were huge. And they were predominantly Muslim, and I was so shocked at that, 16 years ago, because I didn't even realise that the Muslim religion was so prevalent in so many parts of India. And it's I don't know, it's such a lesson in, we have to really examine a country, or just educate ourselves better, or educate myself better. That's basically it. But I really want to go back, and I think there's so many beautiful things about India, and one day I will. So someone asked, do I try to pronounce the names or speak the different languages while I'm reading? Yes, I do, but I always butcher them. And I think that's also part of the reason. I think at a certain point I had to say, okay, stop pausing for that, because I would get like stuck trying to like pronounce the poetry passages, which was completely pointless and irrelevant. And all it did was sort of stop my train of thought. And then I would have to go back and read more. And then, so I found it just made me read in a very disjointed way. So I had to stop that. And so another, what have I learned from the book? I mean, that's a really good question. I've learned that I need to learn more. No, but I think there's something beautiful about this idea of finding your family and finding your happiness in whatever form they come. And that, this idea of you have to follow the beat within your own heart. And I think that that's something that, why everybody ended up in Andrew's hotel. And it's this, these people who had been so damaged or destroyed, or felt like they didn't exist, or felt like they didn't belong, or they weren't wanted. And that you will always be able to find your own tribe. And I think that that's such an important thing. And that's why friendships are so important. I think that's one of the things. I mean, there's probably lots more, and I probably should have thought about this answer more. And also, I again, it's just that thing of we all have to do better to hold the people in power to account. I don't know why. I feel so overwhelmed by it all at the moment, and it's living in the UK and seeing everything that's going on here, and everyone, all the different responses to COVID, and obviously knowing what's going on in the US, and seeing what's happening in Belarus and in Brazil, and in so many different parts of the world. We are at the mercy of these people who don't value life or women or other people's dignity or property. And it just feels like there's a horrible confluence of greed and corruption, and it's all starting to just rear its really ugly head in a very, very strong, horrible way at the moment. And it feels a little like, oh God, how do we combat all of these things? And maybe it's about obviously it's about in our own lives and in our own little worlds and in our own little ministries, making sure that we, I don't know, live in positive and life-affirming ways, and hopefully those ripple out. But also I think it has to be somewhat bigger than that. And I don't know. I'm rambling. I'm totally rambling. It's late here, so that's my excuse. What else? Okay, so someone asked, obviously we'll talk about the things that we loved, but what were some of the things I didn't like? I think it was sometimes, I wished she had stayed with the characters and their story, and sometimes she would go on these tangents of explaining stuff that I didn't know that they actually added to what the story was, or I didn't know what I was getting out of it necessarily. Like I think of some of the, is it the letters? I was like, what's in this letter? What's so important that I need to know in this letter? Or even some of the transcriptions from Tilo's mom, and I thought there was going to be some of them that were going to be like really revelatory, and we would learn something from them. But quite often I just was like, well, it's not really adding to this. So did there need to be so many? Or if there were some, maybe some of it would be some information, and I think, it was a frustration because I just wanted to know more, I suppose. Okay, so what else? What touched me the most about the book? I mean, the suffering, I think. The suffering of so many people in so many various different ways. And then the struggle of those people to just live a better life. From Saddam Hussein, which I think is genius that he chose that name, but it's from the most painful place. And I think that's also, it's just the resilience of human beings. The most awful, horrible thing can happen to people, but they will get up the next day and they will carry on and they will try to form some semblance of a life. I mean, if you think of, Anjem she literally went to a graveyard to die. And, I loved that line she had where it was, they're like, you only can be in here when you're dead. And she was like, but I am dying. And this idea that she went there to give up, or she went there with no hope. And yet, by the very fact of her just getting up every day, living every day, this world and this family grew up around her. And I thought that was just so beautiful. And it was transformative for her and for everyone else that she then managed to touch their lives. And I guess that's the thing. It's like, one happy life will have a ripple effect. So I think that was the thing that was most touching to me. And I've kind of answered this one, but do I feel this relates to what's going on in the world? Well, I've kind of explained that. I'm not going to go down that dark hole again. I'll try and keep it light. But yeah, I do. I think, the absurdity of war and violence and cruelty. I don't know if absurdity is the right word, because it's obviously such a painful and terrible thing that affects people. But we have to find a better way of dealing with each other and resolving conflict. And I think it's all too relevant at the moment. So, well, someone here, Nicole E. Farrell, has said it so much better than I would. She said, the theme of partition, whether nationally, politically, religiously, or interpersonally, was so complex and beautifully developed and written. Well said. I wish I'd said it as eloquently as that. let's go back to you guys for a little bit. Brazilian government wants to tax books. What do I think of that? I think that is ridiculous because books... Seriously, Bolsonaro? I think that that's awful, and I hope that that doesn't happen, because access to education, literature, knowledge is important and powerful, and that's exactly probably why they want to tax it. And I feel very sad for you guys at the moment, and I hope that, yes, I hope that he is not in power for much longer. Okay, so what else? When I read the novel, I felt a deep compassion for some of the heroes. It made me think the whole burden of the world lies on a few ordinary people, but basically we also live in a dark world. Yeah, I'm trying to not believe that. I'm trying to believe that there's a lot of beauty and hope and positivity in this world. But yeah, I know sometimes it does feel like it's a little dark. You know, Rick Rosal, don't come here if you're going to put down stupid things and shitty things on my feed. I'm not here for it. Thank you. I had to stop reading several times to research the scenario and about the author herself to start understanding what she was criticising, and it was the best thing I did. Agreed. I mean, I was aware of her activism a little, but not to the extent of it. And she's an incredible woman, and I've sort of, in the last couple of days, just been, listening to a lot of her interviews, and she's quite a formidable and inspiring woman. So I suggest to everyone, if you can, listen to her speak, because she's pretty amazing. Somebody's like, didn't you almost go back, but you had your Outlander audition? This is very true. In fact, if I had gone to India the second time, I probably wouldn't have gotten Outlander. So everything happens for a reason. The trick to the names is to go from the last syllable and work yourself backwards. Cryptic. Okay, let's see what else. So this was interesting. Coming from a Western worldview, did you find the perceptions of 9/11 and the crisis in Iraq interesting? It really opened my view to more broad than what we were often taught. Well, yeah, I think it is really, and this is why I'm trying to read as many books from around the world and share as many books with everyone from around the world, because I do think that we need to look at the point of view of other cultures and understand that we live in a world where the Western idea is, idolized, and we all think that our way of life is the best. And, there are many people who can argue for that and against that, and I'm not going to get into that here. But what I do think is it's really important to understand that there is another point of view, and these events and, especially the Iraq War, it affects the people who are living there and the people who are living around the world in very different ways. And I think it's important that we all kind of get outside of our own bubble and get outside of our own point of view and our own worldview, I think especially, and understand things from another perspective. And we don't always have to agree, and we don't have to change how we live our lives, but I think it's important that you have some sort of understanding and some sort of empathy. So I'll probably get a lot of flack for saying things like that, but I think it's important. Did you feel like watching Tilo care for her sick mother gave us a more intimate look into what kind of person Tilo became because of their turbulent relationship? Yeah, I found that really fascinating, actually, and I wanted to know more. And imagine being disowned, but yet reclaimed by your mother in the same breath. How that must feel, that you're not worthy of your love, but yet you are. It's, the complexity of that I thought was just fascinating and completely understandable, that she would reject her mother to a certain extent, but then need to go back. And, at the end of the day, I'm sure that your mother is still always your mother, but no matter what kind of fraught relationship you have, there's a need to, I'm sure, understand or get closer to her. And I think that's also what was so frustrating when I was reading the transcriptions, that it was such a beautiful idea as well, that she figured out the one thing that would calm her mother, and that's only something that familial connection would be able to do. But then when there was almost nothing from it, I guess my frustration was probably, a flicker compared to Tilo's frustration. And it was, I thought it was really powerful and a really beautiful sort of device that Arundhati used. Okay, so this was Jessica Desana. I liked this question a lot. I thought it was very good. So I wrote down your name, that's why. But you were talking about this idea of, after becoming Anjum, becoming Mummy, and then I thought about how many different names all of the characters assumed, and very few of them had their own original birth name. And you quoted this Nietzsche quote, was "Become who you are." And I thought it was really fascinating, that idea of, you're born into this world and you're given something from your parents, or you're given this name, or you're given a title, but that's not sort of the story. The story is what you become yourself and what you create. And I thought that was something that was really beautiful, that theme of all of these characters becoming themselves, and the self that they felt, not the self that they were told they should be. So I loved that, and thank you for that. Set me off thinking quite a lot, which I thought was quite nice. And then the last question, I think, that I'm going to read, and then I'll come back to you guys for a second, was, do I believe love and hope can save someone who has been destroyed? 100%. I have to believe that. Otherwise, yeah, there's, I don't know. Otherwise, we might as well all just lie down and give it up. But yeah, I have to believe that. And I think that that's the thing, that, love can heal, I think, everything, I hope. So there you go. That was the answer to that. Actually, there was another question, because I thought this was also quite good. I can't remember who asked this, but the sort of question of this paradoxical theme of the graveyard as a place of salvation. I think I've sort of already talked about that, but yeah, I did love that. And there's something that Anjum said, and I should have wrote this down. Early on, I think maybe I've marked a few things that I haven't actually gone to, but when she's talking in the very beginning, nah, I don't think I marked it, and I'm not going to bore you all with me trying to look for it. But there was something that she did say, which was sort of like maybe when she was told that her name translated was basically Juliet, and she was like, well, maybe I'm all of these things, and why can't I be? And that's kind of, a good lesson to take with us. It's like we don't have to be defined by these sort of very narrow constructs that are given to us by the world, society, all of these things. So trying to, am I in London? No, I'm not in London, but I am in England. They gave the impression of having loosened the leash and was taking a free walk while the rest of us were taken for a walk tied as pets. This quote. Sorry, I'm trying to read these. Sorry, this is terribly, terribly dull for you all as you watch me try to read.